Bueno, muy buenas tardes nuevamente. Vamos a dar inicio a la segunda parte de este panel. Espero que hayan degustado de la alimentación de nuestra SOA universitaria. La esclavitud ha dejado una huella profunda en la historia y en las sociedades contemporáneas. Comprender sus dinámicas y las secuelas que persisten en la actualidad es un desafío constante para la investigación académica. En este simposio busca generar un espacio de reflexión crítica sobre las dificultades metodológicas, éticas y teóricas que enfrentamos al estudiar tanto la esclavitud como sus efectos en la post-esclavitud. A través de un diálogo interdisciplinario abordaremos cómo estos legados influyen en estructuras sociales, económicas y culturales, así como las estrategias para afrontar estas barreras en la producción del conocimiento. Esta presentación final será brindada por la doctora Myriam Cottias, quien es la directora del Centro Internacional de Investigaciones sobre la Esclavitud y la Post-Esclavitud, especializada en la esclavitud en el espacio caribeño. Es historiadora, directora de investigación del CNRS, coordinadora del programa de Agencia Nacional de Investigaciones, Reparaciones, Compensaciones e Indemnizaciones para la Esclavitud, Europa, África, de los siglos XIX al XXI. Myriam Cottias es coeditora principal de las revistas Esclaves en Post-Esclaves, Esclaveries y Post-Esclaveries y directora de colección de esclavajes de Charla, Ciceres SC. Es presidenta del Comité Científico del Programa de la UNESCO de la Ruta Esclavo. Ella expondrá sobre el tema Desafíos de la investigación sobre la esclavitud y post-esclavitud.
After this rich and wonderful conference is a terrible, terrible honor. With colleagues from Costa Rica and Central America, and to give my presentation here in Lebanon. From Lebanon, we can see the French Antilles straight in the eyes, or in Spanish, and I'm sorry for the pronunciation, aquí desde León podemos mirar a las Antillas francesas a los ojos.
Aló, aló. ¿Es este? 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2.
analysis different type of archives, and memory as a way to have the influence or the emergence of the past of history into the contemporary period. However, as a counterintuitive position, I will start my talk with events in continental France and not Caribbean. In France, in continental France, a sequence of events in 2005 marked a tipping point in the legacies of slavery and more broadly of post-coloniality. In January 2005, les indigènes de la République, the movement of the indigenous of the Republic, called for formal discussion on anti-colonialism. Their approach was more grounded in denouncing discrimination than in concrete reform proposals that could help resolve this problem. Also, although their demands at first went largely unnoticed, they were reacted by the October 2005 revolts in the banlieue that followed the death of two young men, Ziad Benna and Bouna Traoré, two young teenagers who have been chased by the police into a power station and were tragically electrocuted. A few months later, the February 23rd, 2005, law had passed. Its controversial fourth article required high school teachers to teach colonization's positive aspects. In November 26, 2005, the Representative Council of Black Association, CRAN, was created to re-establish real, not just theoretical equality among French citizens. The CRAN worked with the French Republic discourse of colorblindness, announcing the intent to make black people visible as an ethno-racial group and asserting its legitimacy as an actor in public life. Denouncing social and symbolic inequalities, discriminatory police violence, and the contested relationship between historians and the wider society were different facets of a fundamental question: what does it mean to be French, especially for people of Afro descent? I suggest taking a retrospective approach to history and crossing the Atlantic to return to French and West Indian society. So that will be my first act in this presentation, and there will be four period, I will say. So the first one is about the Atlantic and about the French colonies, meaning in the Atlantic, Martinique, Guadeloupe, Guyana, and Saint-Domingue. At the beginning of the 17th century, when the French were installed in the Atlantic. These societies, Saint-Domingue, Martinique, Guadeloupe, and less Guyana, were early society with slave society. It was managed by the Code Noir, as you know, for sure. And it was mainly organized, the work, the production of sugar, coffee, and cocoa, was mainly organized on what was called in Martinique and Guadeloupe and also Saint-Domingue, in habitation. Habitation meaning plantation in the French domain. So this was, you know, a kind of a total, how do you say, total way of life, because all types of productivity were included in the same space, and also it was a time of a place for creation and also violence that we discuss so much in this conference. But what I would like to show you is this graphic, because it shows the development of the number of the enslaved people in the French Antilles between the 1633 and 1848. And you see that the major increase of the enslaved population, and in this sense, the definition of a slave population is really reflect on this. In this diapositive, I show you the number of the population in the French Antilles for the same period, between the enslaved people, the white colonist population, and the people of free color in the French Antilles. And you see the differences between these three populations. I include also a special scherm on Saint-Domingue, because Saint-Domingue has had a different development, starting in the 18th century, but with a really high increase of enslaved population due to the development of the sugar production. And so it's about 89% of the population was enslaved, and really a small amount of white and free men and free women of color. So it means that we are, because we were discussing slave society and society with slaves. In this case, no question, we are in the first shame. In this population, in these colonies, based on the extreme violence of slavery, and with a reproduction of population who became positive in the 1800, beginning of the 19th century. You know, there were a shift in the increase in the growth of population, and meaning that the enslaved people start to have a reproduction of its population by itself, with less less increase of the slave trade population. In this special society, there was, and I will stress only two things. There was a development of a Creole language, and we talk about Creole language during this conference. But Creole language in the French Antilles is really a colonial production, meaning that it was created between the colonists, the white population, and the enslaved population. So the part of the word coming from the African language is quite a small part of the language, and the main structure of the Creole in the French colonies, French West Indian colonies, was really what we say a baragouin, which was the way that people on the ships were talking. That's that's a difference. And you know, during this conference, I've heard so much differences between with the French West Indies, and for me, it's just wonderful to see how the same word could have completely different definition, and that's the case here in Central America. Another characteristic is slaves appraise all the time. I mean, starting with the slavery, meaning the beginning of the revolt. You know, you could not think one without the other. And that's quite important to say. And it's very important to say that for the French West Indies, except Saint-Domingue, I will talk of Saint-Domingue after, but for the French West Indies, there was always this question that, you know, there was not a revolt of the enslaved in Martinique and Guadeloupe and Guyana. And it created a kind of moral shift or moral disagreement, thinking about no revolt registered and the big revolt of Saint-Domingue. But to take another topic who was developed in the conference is about the silence of the archives, or more, the impossibility to write the history when you have completely a straight direction. I mean, it's really a new subject who appear this last years about revolts all the time in this colony. Of course, Saint-Domingue is the big revolution in the French West Indies, and you know about this. In 1792, there was uprise of the enslaved people of Saint-Domingue, who conduct to a first abolition in Saint-Domingue, which is a local abolition, who became a national abolition in the February 4th, 1794, because of the revolution of Saint-Domingue. And there is, it's important to keep in mind that there is a dialogue between colonies and the metropolis all the time, and you could not think one without the other. So the abolition of slavery is in Saint-Domingue was a kind of a national trauma, and you might have heard about this. It was the impossibility for France to talk about this revolution, and we were talking about the book history this morning. The revolution of Saint-Domingue is not in the book of history in French, in the French history book. It is not teach, and it was really a kind of fight all this year to include the revolution of Saint-Domingue. We did not win completely now, but we are on the way to win. Why? Because Saint-Domingue is also the worst defeat of Napoleon. Because Napoleon, who is a national hero, was planning to restore slavery after this first abolition of slavery, and he had there was a big battle in Vertières, where the Napoleonic troops were defeated. And I'll show you, there is a monument in the town of Le Cap, in Saint-Domingue, who celebrate, and this is two antagonist discourse, of course, the French one who could not accept it, and the Asian one, of course. It's a national victory and a national pride. So after Vertières, there was the France. France was defeated and asked Haiti. Saint-Domingue became 1804, and France asked to Haiti to pay a debt for the recognition of its independence. Because before that, Haiti was a republic, the first black republic in the world, but was not in the Concert of Nations. I don't know how to say that. It was not recognized at the international level. And to gain this recognition, France asked Haiti to pay a debt, meaning that to reimburse the value of the French property in Haiti. So it was a lot. It was 115 million francs in gold, and it was and he created a debt which is a spiral. I don't know how the word for that. A spiral of debt for Haiti, but we have to say that Haiti paid until 1887 all the franc was due for his recognition. So maybe I will not elaborate on this. I will just say that this year, 2025, it's the 200th anniversary, let's say, of this debt paid by Haiti. And the treaty will organize this date. And in France, there will be quite a lot of conferences and debate on this, and there will be a declaration on this question. After the first abolition, so there will be the reinstauration of slavery in the French Antilles domain, and a new movement of abolitionism who ended in 1848 with the second abolition of slavery in France. Because the Second Republic was restored in France based on equality of citizens, and it was crossing with the second abolitionist movement. It was like an obligation, we'll say, to abolish slavery. It was not that simple, but let's say with the Second Republic came the second abolition of slavery, and all the enslaved people became French. They gained the citizenship and the nationality of being French. And that will be my second point, which is the period of the post-slavery period. Post-slavery, in my sense, is not a chronological or historical movement. Post-slavery is a way to ask about the continuity, the legacies of a system into the present. And that was really the question and the main issue. Being French, but with an régime d'exception, exceptional regime, meaning that the French society stayed colonial society, meaning that republics say there is equality in citizenship, but with a lot of exception. And there was also another point very important for the post-slavery period, which was the indemnity that the old owners in the French West Indies were paid by the state, meaning that the states gave money for the owners in Martinique, Guadeloupe, but not only Guyana and all the French Empire, including Senegal, including Madagascar, and not Algeria, because we talk about that, not Algeria. It was previous, but no. So that was really a key question at this time, but it is also a key question nowadays, because there was, with all these facts, there was a construction of alterity status for the French West Indian, and that's the moment where memory put pressure on history. I mean, the moment where the citizens take the history to ask something for the present, and that was the case in 1988 in France. It was a key moment because it was the 150th anniversary of the abolition of slavery, and it was important because of all the distortion that was built in history around the abolition of slavery. In 1988, there is a very big demonstration in Paris with this motto: slavery is a crime against humanity. And that was the beginning of the elaboration of a law was passed in 2001 called Loi Taubira, who declared that France commit a crime against humanity because of slavery. That was the first point of the law. The second point was the need and the obligation to teach the history of slavery into the French curriculum, which was put in the law, difficult to make in progress, but well, some years ago it was a success. It was a moment also because of the law. There was a special day of commemoration of the abolition of slavery, and there were also monuments were built. Here it's a monument in Paris, monument here in Martinique, also in Diamant, a museum in Pointe-à-Pitre, which is a memorial act. All kind of different elements around this this question of actually the post-slavery period. Based on this question, and all the revendications were based on the fact that, despite the fact that the equality was a center in the elaboration of the politics of France and the national politic form in France, there was no real equality, and it was not enough to have a law. It was not enough to have days of commemoration, monuments, and also teaching in the curriculum of students. So really, all these elements were a way to think about the present, to think about the contemporary question. And that is really the problem, because you know public policies in their symbolic, legislative or educational form help, but do not resolve the problem of racism and discrimination. They do not respond to the demands for justice and equality, and on the contrary, they give risk to demand for reparation, because questions about the effectiveness of the end of slavery continue to be pressing. And it's the reason why the question of reparation really came on the table. It's a long process, the question of reparation, and it starts in the 19th century, but it became more and more important in the 20th and 21st century. And it became also not only a national or a regional demand, it became a global demand. So, for example, in the Caribbean, in September 2013, and this under the aegis of the CARICOM, which is a Caribbean community, the Caribbean states with Haiti launched a campaign targeting Denmark, France, the Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, Spain, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. They took them to court, demanding reparation for the damage caused by slavery and colonization. In the United States, the demand re-emerged in a radical way during the racial clashes in Ferguson in 2015 and 14 and 15, and Charlottesville also in 2015. Reactivating the Black Lives Matter movement, which became in 2012. Justice, and that's the main word, justice in the ethical and judicial sense, and equal treatment, which form the principle of the demands, were put into perspectives with a global demand for reparation. The responses have been varied. In the Netherlands, the government decided to set up a 2,000 million euro fund to deal with the contemporary effects of slavery. In the United States, private organizations such as the Chase Manhattan Bank and Harvard, Columbia, and Howard University, among others, have chosen to finance specific studies grants for the Afro descents. In 2020, the European Union called for the adoption of the national plans to take account of the colonial past and combat structural racism. Changing the way in which history is recorded in public space is also a reparatory issue. And I show you the statue of Joséphine de Beauharnais. Joséphine de Beauharnais, who was the wife of Napoleon. This is in Martinique. And activists cut her head in first step, and after put red paint on her to show how it was really a crime against humanity. changing the name of streets, being the names of slave traders, and with moving statues depicting slavers, are ways of changing the way history is written. And for me, it's a key issue, because the way you write history produce representation, and representations are stay in mind and create, like automatic way to deal with Afro-descent person, for example. So reparation in all the multiple meaning of the terms help to re-establish justice for a more egalitarian world. And I say this in this period, and I say this because we need to stay utopian, I see, and to fight for egalitarianism and justice. But we know that we are in the world what is exactly the opposite, that slavery is re-emerging. Slavery as a way to analyze the social relationship and also the asymmetry in people. So I say that we have to fight for justice, but we do have believe in justice despite all the political situation. Thank you.
Estimados y estimadas participantes, colegas, investigadores, docentes, estudiantes e invitados especiales, nos encontramos en el cierre de este simposio de la Cátedra de Estudios de África y el Caribe, en un espacio que una vez más nos ha permitido reflexionar y cuestionar y proponer nuevas rutas para el análisis de las resistencias, desigualdades y movilidades afro multidimensionales. Durante este día hemos sido testigos de debates enriquecedores, ponencias provocadoras y diálogos inspiradores que han reafirmado la urgencia de profundizar en los estudios sobre las realidades africanas y afrodescendientes desde múltiples perspectivas. Quisiera en primer lugar agradecer a todas las personas que hicieron posible este evento, a las y los ponentes por compartir sus conocimientos y experiencias, al equipo organizador por su esfuerzo y compromiso, y a todas las personas asistentes, cuya participación activa ha enriquecido enormemente nuestro espacio de discusión. Hemos abordado las resistencias como estrategias de supervivencia, identidad y transformación ante contextos de opresión histórica y estructural. Hemos analizado las desigualdades persistentes en el acceso a los derechos, educación, salud y oportunidades económicas. Asimismo, hemos reflexionado sobre las movilidades, tanto geográficas como identitarias, y cómo éstas configuran nuevas formas de ciudadanía que pertenecen a una construcción de un futuro mejor. Sin embargo, este simposio no es el punto de llegada, sino un punto de partida. Nos vamos con más preguntas que respuestas, con nuevos retos por asumir y con el compromiso de seguir construyendo espacios de intercambio que nos permitirán continuar con esta conversación. Muchas gracias.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias a todos y todas. En realidad estas palabras son un poco más informales y desde el corazón, desde la cátedra y desde las organizaciones que participaron en la organización de este congreso. Realmente quisiéramos darles las gracias. Hemos disfrutado de 4 días llenos de debates, de amistad, de respeto, de discusiones. Y solo voy a enlistar y volver a decir los nombres de las personas que hicieron posible este espacio. En primer lugar, la Universidad de Cottias y en específico a la Unidad de Investigaciones sobre Migración y Racismo por haber apoyado este congreso en toda su logística y también en su contenido, a el African Multiple Cluster de la Universidad de Bayreuth, y dentro de la Universidad de Costa Rica al Decanato de la Facultad de Ciencias Sociales, sin el cual no hubiéramos podido lograr todas las metas que nos propusimos, al Centro de Investigaciones y Estudios Políticos de la Facultad de Ciencias Sociales, porque apoyaron y sostuvieron este simposio, a la Oficina de Asuntos Internacionales y Cooperación Internacional, la OICI, al Instituto de Investigaciones Psicológicas, que también nos apoyaron, y por supuesto a la sede del Caribe, que es parte central y corazón de la Cátedra de Estudios de África y el Caribe, y que nos permite precisamente seguir profundizando en la investigación, la acción social y también en la docencia. Más específicamente, quisiera agradecer a la doctora Myriam Cottias por esta excelente conferencia, al doctor Jean Muteba Rayer por la excelente conferencia de inauguración, y a la doctora Vanessa Smith Castro, quien nos apoyó en todo el proceso, al máster Walter Anderson, quien también nos apoyó en todo este proceso, al doctor Alonso Ramírez del Centro de Investigaciones y Estudios Políticos y miembro del Consejo Consultivo de esta cátedra, a Manuel Monestel, a la profesora Rina Cáceres, al profesor Paul Lovejoy, a la profesora Lady Alpizar, a Wilson Arroyo, a María Paula Barrantes Reynolds, a José Andrés Fernández Montes de Oca, a la profesora Ute Fendler, a la profesora Elizabeth Cunón, a la profesora Maripie Valerín, algunas ya no están en este simposio, a la doctora Isabel Avendaño y al doctor Luis Mora. Sin ellos y ellas no hubiéramos podido lograr estos 4 días tan fructíferos. Entonces quisiera pedir un aplauso para nosotros y nosotras, y esperamos que nos encontremos en otras partes. Y por supuesto a las asistentes, quienes realizaron una excelente mesa ayer por la tarde y que son el futuro también de la investigación. Muchas gracias, y ahora disfrutar del Caribe. Gracias. No ha terminado, dice José Andrés.
Unas palabras más informales, las voy a decir en español y en inglés. So the symposium is officially over. You are on your own now? No. So the plan is, we still have like 3 hours before the bus heads back to the university. My understanding is